Ah, that's amazing. So much water in it. Strips of, which is incredibly sweet. Crikey, that is amazing.
As we all know, following Ed Stafford means being hungry most of the time, like being hungry 9 times in 3 days. But his food supply in this episode is just barely acceptable. For example, this little white and plump high-protein snack, don't be fooled by its small size. In terms of equal mass, its protein content is several times higher than that of beef. It's not his style to just eat meat and no vegetables. Paired with a few wild passion fruits, Ed Stafford directly makes a bowl of appetizing insect salad. This big bite is free from any additives, focusing on a balanced diet of meat and vegetables in its most natural flavor. Since Ed Stafford traversed the Amazon, he has become a legendary figure, known far and wide as an expert in enduring hunger. Unexpectedly, 12 years later, in this episode, he will once again take on a survival challenge in the Amazon basin. This place boasts the greatest biodiversity in the world, including some terrifying creatures that could make one wish for reincarnation on the spot. As the saying goes, what seems dangerous is actually far from safe. Therefore, the contestants in this challenge are also highly capable. Donnie not only has the luxurious hair that Ed Stafford envies, but is also a Marine officer with over a decade of military service. As usual, they are only allowed to carry a hunting knife at the start. They will set off from the starting point, the Solimois River, and head north to reach the Jongden. Note: Liaone, Rio Negro River. In the end, whoever boards the yacht first will be the ultimate winner. Everything is ready. With the referee's signal, the two officially embark on their journey of hunger. Since they are currently about a kilometer away from the shore, this is a nightmare for Ed Stafford, who is not good at swimming. Meanwhile, Donnie, with his marine background, swims at an incredibly fast pace. In contrast, Ed Stafford, after struggling with the dog paddle for a while, has only swum a short distance and is already exhausted. Fortunately, there is a large patch of water hyacinths floating on the water, providing his feet with a moment of rest. Little does he know that Donnie has already reached the shore. Although he has taken the lead at the start, Donnie still doesn't dare to slack off. He turns around and continues on his way. Coincidentally, as soon as he enters the jungle, he finds protein. A sloth is hanging prominently on a tree, looking at Donnie below with a confused expression. Considering that it's just the start and he's not very hungry, Donnie ultimately holds back and spares the sloth. He then directly enters a frenzied mode. However, to avoid stepping on snakes in the jungle, he plans to make a simple pair of leg guards from tree bark. After simply binding the tree bark, the job is done. As for whether it's effective, he'll only know after being bitten. On the other side, Ed Stafford reluctantly leaves the water hyacinths. Along the way, he grabs a floating log. Now, he doesn't have to worry about sinking halfway anymore. After swimming with the log for an unknown amount of time, Ed Stafford, who has barely eaten his fill, finally reaches the shore. After resting for a moment, he gets up and continues on his way. After a long trek, the scenery suddenly opens up. It seems to be a dried-up riverbed, with some blooming water lilies growing inside. Ed Stafford certainly won't let this good stuff go. These flowers are not only edible, but also an excellent source of carbohydrates, so Ed Stafford directly stuffs them into his mouth. While enjoying his feast, he unexpectedly discovers an unlucky creature. Without further ado, he stuffs everything into his mouth. The crunchy texture is simply delicious. To carry as many supplies as possible, Donnie cuts down a palm tree and plans to make a backpack. He simply weaves the leaves together and binds them with tree bark as straps, thus creating a simple yet practical backpack. He then continues on his way with the backpack on his back. Not long after, he hits the jackpot. He discovers a huge Brazil nut tree. The fruit of this tree is incredibly delicious. Soon, he finds one under the tree and quickly takes out his knife to split it in half. The white flesh inside is immediately revealed. Eagerly, he wraps a piece and pops it into his mouth. The aroma is pleasant, the taste is crunchy and delicious, and the vitamin content is several hundred times higher than that of beef. He eats until he's completely satisfied. Meanwhile, Ed Stafford ran into trouble. By this time, the sun had been completely obscured by clouds. Without relying on the Pythagorean theorem of the sun rising in the east and setting in the west to determine direction, trekking through the rainforest was undoubtedly very easy to get lost. Helplessly, Ed Stafford could only chop off branches as he walked, leaving marks. However, after just a few steps, Ed Stafford successfully chopped into a hornet's nest. This scene instantly scared him so much that his hair almost stood up. Without caring about the cameraman, he quickly fled from this trouble spot. Fortunately, he ran fast and remained unharmed. This reckless move also made him burst into a fit of laughter. Before long, evening arrived. Both of them began to search for a campsite for the night. Ed Stafford chopped a branch and stuck it in the ground as a support pole, then covered the roof with layers of palm leaves. Although the shelter was a bit hastily built, the advantage was that it was efficient and quick. As for Donnie on the other side, he planned to sleep on a tree for the night. Considering the violent mosquitoes in the rainforest, he simply covered both sides with palm leaves, then crawled inside and fell asleep early. Meanwhile, Ed Stafford was busily doing his old job. After a series of vigorous actions, when he checked the result, Ed Stafford, in the familiar rainforest environment, had intended to show off a bit, but ended up performing so poorly. After slightly adjusting his mindset, he continued with another round of friction. Of course, the result was still a failure. Finally, after who knows how long, through Ed Stafford's unremitting efforts, he successfully struck out tiny sparks. With the subsequent appearance of flames, Ed Stafford immediately burst into his signature smile with excitement. With a campfire, he didn't have to worry about mosquito bites tonight. He then fell asleep exhausted. Before long, the next day arrived. After trekking all morning, Ed Stafford finally found a tributary of the river at the destination. Thirsty as he was, he didn't care about the risk of diarrhea, and drank until he was about 7 or 8/10 full. Next, he only needed to trek along the river to reach the destination. Looking at the rushing water, Ed Stafford immediately decided to take the water route downstream. With a plan in mind, he turned around and started chopping tree trunks for floating. This kind of tree trunk, which looked like bamboo joints inside, was very suitable. Without time to make it perfectly, he hurriedly lay on top and set off. Sure enough, the current speed was now incredibly fast. On the other side, Donnie had intended to be a handsome man in peace, but the female mosquitoes in the jungle were too violent, biting him and making him scream in pain. Finally, unable to bear it any longer, he poked an ant nest from the tree, and then placed his hand on it, letting ants crawl all over his arm. The acetic acid in their bodies had a very good mosquito-repelling effect. He didn't even spare his armpits, coating them all over before feeling relieved. Later, as he moved forward, he discovered a cave, which also sparked his desire to eat some protein, so he chopped a branch and decided to make a bow and arrow. As for the bowstring, he used a rope woven from tree bark and tied it to both ends. After finishing everything, he couldn't wait to test its power. Next, it depended on whether he could encounter some unlucky prey. Switching back to Ed Stafford, due to island trees blocking the way on the water surface ahead, he had no choice but to go ashore and proceed cautiously. However, as soon as he went ashore, he almost stepped on a 3-meter-long anaconda. Good heavens, it scared the other party into a water escape, hurrying to save its life. Ed Stafford couldn't help but exclaim, he almost had a feast for 10 right there. After walking forward for who knows how long, just as he was about to face dehydration, he finally found a water vine in the jungle, which was rich in fresh water, just enough to solve the urgent problem. He directly chopped off a section, held it, and started drinking water voraciously. After finishing, he didn't forget to cool down his bald head. After simply drinking his fill, he continued on his way. As evening approached, Ed Stafford also started to busy himself with the shelter. To stay away from the ground, he planned to make a hammock out of tree bark. After a burst of activity, it was finally done. After finishing, he quickly lay on it to test the effect. Unexpectedly, as soon as he lay down, the branch broke under the weight. Obviously, he had to find another tree. At the same time, Donnie had been trekking all day and was already physically and mentally exhausted. Finally, through the trees, he saw the reflection on the water surface. He thought it was a tributary of the river at the destination, but upon approaching, he found it was just a stagnant pool. However, where there was water, there was usually protein lurking around. So he took his bow and arrow and started searching along the pool. Soon, he noticed movement in the water. Without caring what it was, Donnie fired an arrow at it. Good heavens, it turned out to be an electric eel. Seeing that the creature was still alive, Donnie knocked it out with 2 blows from a stick, then quickly chopped it into pieces. High-end ingredients still didn't require complicated cooking methods. He simply roasted it over a fire to ensure its original flavor was preserved. The next second, Donnie was enjoying his nutritious meal with a satisfied expression. After eating and drinking his fill, he lay down early, feeding the mosquitoes. Before long, the 3rd day arrived. Ed Stafford, who hadn't eaten for 2 days, felt a wave of hunger in his stomach. After trekking forward for a while, he finally found something good on a tree. This fruit, which looked like a passion fruit and was named passion fruit, tasted exactly the same as a passion fruit when he took a bite. It was not only rich in carbohydrates, but its vitamin C content far exceeded that of beef. As a foodie, he directly picked a dozen or so, packed them up, and took them away. After walking just a few steps, he immediately had another stroke of luck. He discovered a kind of pod on the tree that looked like a bean pod, with flesh inside rich in sugar and carbohydrates. Locals often ate this stuff as a snack. Eagerly, he popped it into his mouth to taste it. The flavor was sour and sweet, spicy and fragrant, simply outstanding. Just squatting on the ground, he ate until he was completely satisfied. At the same time, Donnie had been trekking all morning, and finally found the river channel he had been longing for at this time. Seeing the fast-flowing water, he decided to build a raft and go downstream. The materials were the ubiquitous palm tree stems. The construction method was very simple. He just needed to gather enough materials and then tie them together with tree bark to get the job done. Subsequently, he sat on the raft and happily continued on his way. Judging from the map, the competition was now more than halfway over, and Ed Stafford had another piece of good news on his side. He picked up several nuts that had fallen from trees on the ground. When he cracked them open, he found an unexpected surprise inside. This stuff was one of the few high-protein snacks in the wilderness survival world. Both its texture and flavor were quite authentic. After finishing one, he wasn't satisfied, so he collected several more. Paired with the passion fruits he had packed earlier, Ed Stafford quickly whipped up a bowl of appetizing dark cuisine. Without further ado, he directly popped it into his mouth. Swallowing it in one gulp was the proper way to have a balanced diet of meat and vegetables, nutritious and delicious. After eating and drinking his fill, he continued on his way. As he got closer to the main river channel, the water level gradually deepened, and combined with the slower water flow, his progress was greatly slowed down, so he had to select wood again to build a raft, and then firmly secure it with tree bark one by one. Soon, Ed Stafford set off again on his raft. As time passed, the sky suddenly poured down heavy rain. However, this didn't dampen Donnie's determination to beat Ed Stafford. He kept paddling until dusk, exhausting himself to the point where he was gasping for breath. As soon as he went ashore, he fell asleep immediately. In contrast, Ed Stafford built a platform on the water surface, then lay on it and fell asleep early. Before long, the fourth day arrived. Ed Stafford made a paddle out of a tree trunk early in the morning, then set off. Seeing that there were only a dozen or so kilometers left to the destination, both of them went all out and launched their final sprint. At this moment, they saw each other across the water. Donnie knew that his raft's performance couldn't match the others, so he abandoned the raft and went ashore directly. He decided to cut straight through the rainforest and head forward in a straight line. Ed Stafford, seeing that the other side was playing dirty, also quickly abandoned the raft and followed closely behind, going ashore. Subsequently, they rolled and crawled through the jungle. After passing through the jungle, he finally saw the big ship at the destination. When he finally managed to board the ship, he thought he was the coolest guy in the survival world, only to find that Donnie had already arrived first. In the end, with Ed Stafford's crushing defeat, this challenge came to an end. This might be the episode with the best food in Decisive Wilderness. Ed Stafford had fresh and delicious fish sashimi right at the beginning, and in the middle of the night, he caught a giant bass weighing several dozen pounds. His opponent Max's food was even more outrageous. Not only did he steal several crocodile eggs from a crocodile nest, but he also snatched a sheep from a leopard's mouth. This survival show has once again turned into a bite of the deserted island. The challenge location for this episode is in northern Kenya, Africa. This place has the world's largest desert lake. Besides that, it's practically barren and desolate. His opponent Max is a professional athlete. At the same time, he also has extremely rich wilderness survival experience. As usual, they only carry a machete at the start. As for his hair, Ed Stafford still has none. As the two arrived at the starting point, they saw a group of villagers, bouncing and jumping towards them. Then the village chief casually took out a tablet, and Teddy inside it was going to introduce the competition rules. First, the two have to cross the lake in front of them, which is full of crocodiles. For this, the production team specially borrowed 2 rafts from the villagers. After reaching the other side of the lake, they then have to cross a volcanic lava area and a desolate and lifeless Gobi desert. The finish line is a small black mountain in the middle of the desert. The first one to arrive will be the winner of this episode. With the village chief's command, the two quickly ran towards the rafts on the shore. Max, relying on his youthful vigor, dashed out dozens of meters in an instant. In contrast, Ed Stafford had a rough start. Due to being overweight, as soon as he sat on the raft, it began to sink. Helplessly, he had to drag the raft back to the shore. Then he tied 2 more pieces of wood to the raft to increase its buoyancy. After a busy period, he finally pushed the raft off again. Unknown to him, while Ed Stafford was modifying the raft, Max had already successfully reached the other side of the lake. Taking advantage of his current leading position, he planned to first look for available resources on the shore. In no time, he found a broken fishing net on the shore and immediately cut a part of it off to use as a rope. Just as he was about to continue on his way, he suddenly noticed a crocodile that had just entered the water on the nearby beach. This scene gave him a bold idea. After pondering for a moment at the spot where the crocodile entered the water, Max immediately sneaked over, planning to steal crocodile eggs. After searching on the beach for a while, he didn't spend much time finding the crocodile's nest. Unexpectedly, he really dug out several crocodile eggs from inside. Finding food right at the start was undoubtedly very exciting. Before the crocodile mother returned, he quickly made a getaway. To better plan his forward route, he decided to climb up the volcano to observe the terrain. With a plan in mind, he stepped on the gas and set off. At the same time, Ed Stafford finally reached the shore with his raft. Max also reached the mountaintop after a long trek. The finish line is behind that big mountain on the horizon. But first, they have to cross a lava area. At this moment, Max happened to turn his head and saw Ed Stafford, who had just landed below. Of course, Ed Stafford also saw Max at the volcano's mouth. Although his opponent was in the lead, he wasn't worried at all. Regarding Max's choice, Ed Stafford directly called it reckless behavior. If one enters the desert without any preparation and can't find water sources, they might as well just admit defeat on the spot. The always cautious Ed Stafford certainly wouldn't take such a risk, so he decided to follow the local people's example and make a basket to catch fish. The material would be the fibers from shredded palm leaves. The making method was extremely simple. Just weave the leaves together, and you'll get a net. Then use branches to make the basket frame, and finally fix the net on it, and it's done. After finishing it, he immediately went to the shore to give it a try. He experienced several failures along the way, but fortunately, Ed Stafford had incredible luck. He finally trapped 2 unlucky fellows. This excited him so much that he couldn't help but dance around. Being extremely hungry, he didn't even have time to start a fire and cook the oil. He directly put the fish in his mouth and ate them as sashimi. However, these 2 fish were clearly not enough. He needed to prepare at least 3 days' worth of food. According to local residents, there are extremely large bass in the lake, so he picked up a bone from the shore, intending to use this thing as a fish hook to catch a fish for a snack. Meanwhile, Max had already entered the lava zone. The numerous holes in the ground and the temperature of over 40 degrees Celsius made this place seem dangerous, but in fact, it was not safe at all. After cautiously walking several kilometers inside, as the sun was about to set, he, already exhausted, immediately found a good spot and planned to take a good rest. Fortunately, there were crocodile eggs to replenish some energy. Unexpectedly, upon cracking one open, he found that a baby crocodile had hatched inside, and due to the hot weather, the baby crocodile had already died. Smelling the odor, it was incredibly pungent. It seemed that dinner was basically out of the question today. Helplessly, he could only endure the discomfort and spend the night. At the same time, Ed Stafford was building a shelter on the shore. To avoid being disturbed by some troublemaker in the middle of the night while practicing his hand speed, he specially built a stone wall. After finishing, he turned around and started making a fish hook. All he needed to do was tie the bone and wood together, and it was done. Then he went to the shore and hung an entire fish directly. Although he didn't know if he could successfully catch a big fish, but to be able to detect a fish biting the hook at the first moment, he specially tied the rope to his toe. After doing everything, he went to bed early. As expected, in the middle of the night, when Ed Stafford was having a wet dream, he suddenly felt a movement on his foot, so he quickly got up and gave the rope a hard tug. Upon approaching, wow, this was really something. He was so excited that he immediately flashed his signature smile. With food, even his bald head started to shine more brightly. Before long, it was the next day. Max, who had woken up feeling handsome, got up early and left the house. Having not drunk a drop of water, he was now at the point of running out of supplies. The top priority was to quickly find a water source for replenishment. In contrast, Ed Stafford was calmly processing the fish meat on the shore at this time. As we all know, survival is about making the most of everything. Of course, something as good as fish skin couldn't be wasted. With a little processing, it could be used to store fresh water. Then, after a lot of sewing and mending by hand, finally, a piece of wood was stuffed into the sewn fish skin. This way, a natural water flask was made. Without any accidents, it could probably carry about 2 liters of water. As for the remaining fish meat, it was all cut into thick slices, and then all put into a basket to be packed away. As they moved forward, the fish meat would slowly be sun-dried into jerky by the sun. On the other side, Max finally couldn't hold on any longer. The clouds in the distance, proved that there was a possibility of rain there. Helplessly, he could only change his route and trudge towards the mountainous area below the clouds. Although Ed Stafford chose to bypass the lava area, the environment he faced was not much better. Trudging with difficulty in the heat of over 40 degrees Celsius for a long time, his water was now completely drunk up. However, there were still only stones and sand around, and not even the slightest sign of water could be found. At the same time, Max had already arrived in the mountainous area. Just as he was about to die of thirst, he suddenly heard the sound of running water nearby. Following the sound, he quickly found a wild stream. Already thirsty and parched, he directly started drinking non-stop. After drinking, he didn't forget to take a bath to cool his body down. Such a bountiful place was simply too good to pass up spending a night, so he found a tree hole nearby. Needless to say, he could have a good time practicing his hand speed again tonight. As the sun was about to set, Ed Stafford also found a wind-sheltered canyon and fell asleep. Early the next morning, the temperature soared directly to 45 degrees Celsius. It left Ed Stafford feeling listless and drained. The top priority now was to quickly find a water source. During the journey, he happened to find a few wild camels. The sly Ed immediately decided to follow the camels to find water. After walking forward for a few more hours like this, finally, heaven did not disappoint the bald guy. A row of green vegetation appeared ahead. Based on experience, there must be water there. However, when he approached, except for a dry riverbed, he didn't see even a trace of water. However, the fact that there is such lush vegetation here indicates that there must be water beneath the surface. Upon digging, sure enough, the sand below was very moist. So, Ed Stafford decided to make a filtration device to extract moisture. Actions speak louder than words. He found a piece of sedimentary rock and ground it into powder. Then he opened his drainage system, referring to a makeshift setup, and poured his homemade iced black tea, metaphorically for urine or some liquid, over it. He planned to use this stuff to make himself a straw first. After stirring it evenly, he wrapped it around a branch and finally placed it beside the fire to dry out the moisture. Soon, Ed Stafford had a straw. Then he dug a hole in the ground, lined it with a layer of leaves, put the straw inside, and sealed the hole with leaves and mud. After doing everything, he couldn't wait to suck through the straw. According to the Pythagorean theorem of air pressure, he could suck out the water. Sure enough, he soon successfully drank the water. Although it had a strange taste, it was much better than dehydration and heatstroke. In excitement, a smile involuntarily bloomed on his face again. On the other side, Max wasn't in a hurry to set off. Having been hungry for 2 days, he decided to catch a few crabs to fill his stomach first. After searching along the stream for a while, he finally caught 2 small fish and shrimp and happily packed them away. However, after walking just a few steps, he noticed bloodstains on the ground, which didn't seem to have dried yet. Then he looked up and, wow, there was a goat hanging from a tree. He concluded that this must be the work of a leopard. The claw marks on the tree trunk further confirmed this guess. So Max started doing his old trick again. While the leopard was away, he planned to make a ladder and take the goat. After making the ladder, he immediately took action. At this time, speed was crucial. After all, a leopard was not an easy opponent. Soon, he successfully climbed up the big tree using the ladder. Then, it was also very smooth. To get the goat down from the tree, after successfully getting it, he walked a long way, before feeling relieved. However, to avoid the leopard smelling the scent and launching a sneak attack, Max first made a circular fence around the campsite, with thorns, and then, not feeling secure enough, he built a small domed shelter inside. After solving the shelter problem, he lit a campfire, and then started processing the goat meat. There was so much meat that he couldn't finish it all. As for these 2 goat testicles, they could just be used to carry water. Then he couldn't wait to string a bunch of meat together and boil it vigorously over the fire. The next second, Max was happily grilling the meat skewers, with oil dripping from every bite, spicy and delicious. After finishing, he happily started grilling the small crabs. Wow, one might think this guy was on vacation. In contrast, Ed Stafford looked a bit disheveled at this time, but fortunately, he could still eat dried, grilled fish to supplement protein. As for the taste, it was just passable. As the night slowly fell, before long, it was the 4th day. Ed Stafford, having had the miserable experience of almost getting sunburned yesterday, applied a layer of sunscreen made of stone powder to himself early in the morning today, and then continued on his way. At the same time, after packing the smoked dried meat, Max turned and went to the stream to fill up with fresh water. With everything ready, he set off confidently. After trekking all morning, Ed Stafford was now blocked by a canyon, so he used all his strength to carry a dead tree over as a ladder, and then slowly descended to the bottom of the cliff. Finally, he successfully reached the bottom. After walking like this for who knows how long, he had now seen the small black mountain, the destination, in the distance. And after passing through a patch of shrubs, Max also saw the destination shortly after. Judging from the map, the progress of the two was almost even. With the destination in sight, both of them started the final sprint. Facing Max, who was more than 10 years younger than him, Ed Stafford, who was nearly 50, didn't show any sign of being outdone by age. After a wild run, he finally reached the destination. Just as he thought he had won the competition again, Max suddenly popped out from behind a rock. Obviously, Ed Stafford had rarely lost the competition, but Max had only arrived a few minutes earlier. This challenge also came to an end here.